Welcome to the Putback here on SNY.TV. I'm Ian Begley, SNY's NBA insider and host of the show. We're going to be talking Knicks and the rest of the NBA for the next half hour or so. I have two fantastic guests with me. Shaun Geddes, I'm Possible. And if you're watching this, I'm sure you know who Shaun is, the founder, co-founder with his buddy Dean of Knicks Twitter Day. Just a fantastic event that they put together, remarkable. I'm sure you've seen some of the highlights, including Shaun's dunk, which I'm sure we'll show and get into later. And also Kevin Gleason, the host of Drive Time radio show in Sacramento on the Kings flagship station. He's here to share his thoughts and share some insight on Mike Brown, who coached the Kings before coming here to New York. So we're going to get into all of it. And as always, we're going to get started here with the baseline. And the baseline in our show today is we're going to get right into the coach. We want to talk about the reaction to the hire and the press conference and everything. And so I want to start, Shaun, with you. When you heard that Mike was the guy after the search, what were your thoughts?
I was honestly very happy. I kind of felt like he was the guy before he was announced. Like the writing on the wall kind of just said that. And I think back to the Sacramento Kings offense a couple of years ago, and the way they used De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis to play off of each other was very imaginative, and I feel like that's what we need in our offense. And, being able to utilize Jalen Brunson and Karl Towns that way, I feel like opens up a world of possibilities, and I believe we have a better supporting cast. So with what he can do for our offense, I think he might be, the best candidate. He's been to the finals. He's won a championship. He's had plenty of experience. So I'm definitely on board for Mike Brown.
Kevin, were you surprised that Brown ended up here, so soon after the Kings exit? What were your thoughts on the Knicks landing here with their head coach?
Yeah, first of all, Ian, thank you for the opportunity to be here today and talk Knicks. When I was a lad many years ago, my very favorite first basketball player was Clyde. And I think just watching him on a little black and white TV and the way he controlled the game made me a Knicks fan many years ago. So I appreciate the chance to talk about the Knicks and of course, Mike Brown. I think I speak for most people in Sacramento when I say we were happy for Mike Brown. Mike Brown, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say he was beloved in Sacramento. And yeah, things went sideways in a hurry, as they tend to do here. But Mike Brown turned this thing around. Mike Brown had 2 winning seasons with the Sacramento Kings. That is hard to do. So as far as my reaction, I was just glad to see him end up in a situation where he's got a chance to continue to show what a great coach he is.
The process for the Knicks was non-traditional. Obviously, they didn't have a go-to candidate when they let Tom Thibodeau go. I think it's fair to say, accurate to say, Mike Brown was not choice number one. But that happens sometimes, teams not getting their top choice and landing with the best interview. And, it's worked out several times in NBA history. It hasn't worked out in other times. But the process here, I think at the top, the Knicks were looking at Jason Kidd or hopeful on Ime Udoka or Chris Finch that there could be some way to wedge things in Houston or Minnesota and get one of those guys out of their deals, or Dallas with Kidd. Obviously didn't happen. And then they go through the interview process. And I was told that Timberwolves assistant Micah Nori really impressed the Knicks during the interview process. And, he was getting consideration all along for the job. At the end of the day, Knicks choosing a coach with significant experience in the league. And Mike Brown had several stops: Sacramento, Cleveland, Los Angeles. He's been around. He's coached big markets, big-time players. So they went with experience. But Nori, I was told, with the way he was discussing usage and just how to, keep guys fresh, I think he impressed the Knicks there. So it'll be interesting to see his future there when the next coaching round of hires and interviews goes. But nonetheless, Brown holding a press conference here, introducing himself to New York. And Shaun, I'm sure you were watching that. And what was your takeaway from that first press conference?
I think that my takeaway was just like, he's very focused. I mean, of course, sorry. But he's very focused. Of course, I'm sure, most NBA coaches are, but I think he's got a mission. He didn't really come here and overpromise anything. He didn't say anything unrealistic. He didn't get caught into the, oh, what do you bring that Tibbs didn't? Like, he stayed away. I think he's just going to come here and be basketball. And he's also like lighthearted. I feel like he did a really good job, interacting with the media. He wasn't bothered by it. I'm looking forward to how he's going to handle that throughout his time here. I feel like a lot of times with Tibbs, I feel like I learned from him in some of his post-game press conferences, like just the way that he approached everything, the way that he spoke on the team. And so I'm interested to be able to do that from a different perspective with a different coach, and different execution as well.
Kevin, the expectations are sky high. He took over for Tom Thibodeau after Thibodeau reached the conference finals, first time in 25 years the Knicks had gotten there. Knicks choosing to move on. Was it the right choice? Was it the wrong choice? I think, we won't know until late May, early June, but expectations certainly through the roof here in New York. And I wonder, just based on your time covering Mike, how do you think he would handle those expectations or these kind of elevated expectations?
That's a great question, because it's almost a different job than he had in Sacramento in terms of the expectations. When Mike was hired by the Kings, it was a matter of, look, can you come in and staunch the bleeding and stabilize the patient? And he came in, of course, with this winning pedigree, and he did a great job of that. Here with the Knicks, it seems to me the job is you've got to deliver a baby, a championship baby. So to Shaun's point, Mike did a great job of addressing the expectations. I thought it was really interesting in the press conference. It's almost as if he Googled things to say in your opening press conference, and he just stuck to those really safe talking points, which I understand. I think he's genuine when he says he's excited about embracing those expectations. I think he's proven he's capable of doing that. I'll also say one of the things that he said, he talked about the partnership that's so important between he and the front office. And yeah, that again is something that all coaches say, but it's something that was lacking. And that's what spelled his doom here in Sacramento. That relationship fell apart. So when he said that, yeah, on the one hand, that's what coaches say. On the other, I raised an eyebrow at that, because in a way, I think he was pointing out we didn't have that in Sacramento.
That's interesting. And just based on how it all played out there in Sacramento, let's start early, because what worked? What did he do to kind of get things off the ground and moving in the way that everybody saw that he did with that playoff berth?
Yeah, well, as Shaun pointed out, he did a great job bringing in an offense that was in his first year there. It was one of the most efficient offenses in NBA history. He is a defensive-minded coach. He was tasked by ownership with coming in and addressing the offense. So Mike Brown came in and he brought a lot of components from the Warrior offense that he'd worked with for so long, a lot of DHO stuff, and even had Domantas Sabonis in almost a Draymond Green type role, running the offense through him and also bringing the ball up. And I think that caught the rest of the league off guard to a degree. They also shot the ball really well that year, and that's one of the issues they had in the ensuing years. They just didn't shoot the ball as well. He also did a great job defensively. Mike Brown, in his second year with the Kings, they were 14th in defensive rating, and they should build a statue of him for that, because that team was terrible defensively. He did a great job knowing that they had trouble stopping the dribble penetration, and Sabonis was not a great shot blocker or rim protector. So they ran almost like a pack line, and they would really pack the paint. And they did get burned from the three-point line, but they did do a really effective job limiting points in the paint with a team that was not very good defensively. And I don't think he gets enough credit for that.
It's interesting because when you say, giving up, not giving up, but getting burned from three because you're taking other things away, I think that's what the Knicks did semi-regularly under Tom Thibodeau. And Shaun, I'm wondering, for you, you see obvious areas, or is there an area defensively for you where you think Brown can be better with Karl Towns and Jalen Brunson in the starting five, or be better overall, get this defense up a few notches?
I think a big part of our defense improving, and I felt this way throughout much of the season and most of the playoffs, is just not overcomplicating it. I think that a lot of times we tried so hard to hide Jalen Brunson and Karl Towns that we put ourselves at a disadvantage. Like Jalen Brunson, granted, he's not, he's small, so he's going to get picked on at times, but he's not inept defensively. Like, he can hold his own against a lot of people. Karl Towns is, terrible in pick and roll coverage a lot of times and don't know where to be at or how to handle that. But as far as guarding on he can switch on to most people, so it's just like, hey, if they get that switch, play defense. I think that's a big part. Like, we have enough as far as OG and Mikal, and when Mitch is out there, we have enough help to just play defense through some of those. I think a lot of times we just gave teams advantages because we're sending two, because Jalen has, Derek White on the wing. And it's just like, we don't necessarily have to do that yet. Let them create the advantage before we give it to them. So I'd like to see some of that this year.
And Kevin, the end in Sacramento, I think, surprised everybody. Did it surprise the journalists who are around the team every day, paying attention to the team every day? Did you see something coming there?
You knew something was going to have to happen, and you hoped it wasn't that. And again, I talked about how Mike in a lot of quarters in Sacramento was beloved. He got along really well with the media. But to your point, this was, the year they brought in DeMar DeRozan, and they were all in on last season. And they struggled early, got to 13-13. They came home early December, a 5-game homestand, and they lost all 5. And a couple of them were just crushing losses, including the last one where De'Aaron Fox fouled Jaden Ivey. They were up 3 and he fouled him shooting a corner 3, made it, got the foul, made the free throw. They lost by 1. So the Kings felt something had to be done. I know Monty McNair did not want to let Mike Brown go. And that's one reason why the whole thing was so confusing, because it looked like Monty was trying to talk ownership out of firing Mike.
Right.
He left after practice for a road game in LA, and he got fired on his way to the airport, which was really a bad look, typical King stuff. But it was because I think the GM, Monty McNair, really did not want to fire him, and fans were confused and didn't want him to go either.
Yeah, it seemed to me like an ownership decision, and then led to that quote from Michael Malone in the aftermath of it, which is legendary. I can't say it, but you should Google it because it's a good one. And so he and Monty, though, from what I'd heard, it sounds like from what you're saying, that they were on the same page mostly, as much as a coach and a GM can be with a team with high expectations that's struggling. Is that the sense that you had there even at the end?
It's hard to tell because Monty became obviously the voice of ownership, and it gets back to this whole issue of Mike Brown being a defensive-minded coach and ownership being more concerned about offense. So you would have this literally happened. Monty would meet with the media and people would ask about defense, and he would say, the defense just has to be good enough. The offense is what we're concerned with. And that was against Mike Brown's philosophies. Mike Brown talked openly after a loss to New Orleans. He said, if we think that we're going to beat teams by outscoring them in the playoffs, we've got another thing coming. And he said, and there are people among us who think that's the case. And I think he was talking about the owner. So to answer your question, I think Monty was caught a little bit in between the crossfire between the coach and the owner. And I think Monty ultimately did want to keep Mike Brown around. Yeah,
it's interesting. I want to get back to that too. But I want to ask Shaun, the idea that Brown, has options here with the starting 5, double bigs, Josh Hart, and different configurations there. Will you be okay or disappointed with Brown if he keeps the starting 5 that the Knicks didn't end the season with, but played with for most of the season?
I wouldn't be. I'd be okay with it if that's what he chooses to do. Like, at the end of the day, I trust Mike Brown. He's going to be in there, in training camp and in practice. He's the one drawing up his schemes offensively and defensively. Whatever he feels comfortable with, if he feels like we can execute it and carry it out, I'm good to go. Honestly, the starting lineup we just had got to the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, I don't think that our team is at a disadvantage, So I'm perfectly fine with whatever he decides to do. I think we have multiple options, and that's, for the first time in my life or not, but recently, we have rich people problems. We once had a problem with the starting lineup. We're like, yo, do we have 5 starters on this team? That's where I come from. So I don't have a problem with whatever he chooses to do. It'll be because, he sees that it fits best. Now, if my only problem would be if he makes a decision and then, 15, 20 games go by and that's clearly not the best lineup, and then he sticks with that. As long as he's open to adapting to whatever works best. But yeah, if he wants to go with something that he is confident in and he feels like this works and everybody on the team is good with it, then who am I to complain from outside of the facility? Right.
That makes sense. Very rational take for a passionate Knicks fan, which I love the passion of the Knicks fan base. And I see a lot of rational takes, but sometimes people get excited, and that's when it gets fun on Twitter, honestly. But anyway, I don't want to digress too much. So Brown Kevin maybe was not fully on the same page with McNair, but obviously McNair didn't want to fire him. So I think that tells you something. And the partnership here is something Brown mentioned a lot in that press conference, as you noted, and he mentioned Leon Rose regularly. And so, it's funny, Tom Thibodeau, Leon Rose, so close, have such a strong relationship, I assume. And that was one of the reasons that Leon Rose brought Tom Thibodeau in, his first head coaching hire. And, you would think that everybody's rowing in the same direction. And because of that relationship, that just makes the connection between front office and head coach even more solid. And, there were disagreements along the way. And at some point along the way, Leon Rose, we went from, being willing to, in my view, lay down on the tracks for Tom Thibodeau to obviously recently not wanting to do that and seeing kind of where, the Knicks had fallen short and seeing where coaching had played a role in that. And again, is Leon Rose right? Is he wrong? We're not going to know for at least 10 months here, in my view. But the interesting thing with Brown and Rose is, he mentioned the partnership. The Knicks were looking for a coach who would partner with the front office. I think Tom Thibodeau had, strong ideas. His voice mattered in terms of personnel decisions. Sometimes the decisions were what Thibodeau wanted. Sometimes they were not. Maybe there was some friction there. So I think that's when you talk about the partnership. That's where this is going to come into play. And I want to hit on something else quickly, Kevin, because Mike Brown talked about, how he builds relationships and how those relationships allow him to hold players accountable, in a direct way. And that's something to me that's so key in this league for success. Do your players trust you? Can you tell them hard truths? Can you have honest conversations with them? The communication, I don't think it was always super clear, super wide open lines of communication between Thibodeau and the Knicks. And look, that's not to take anything away from what Thibodeau did, because obviously it worked. But I want to know, Kevin, in Sacramento, did you see Mike as a guy who did hold people accountable? Not even publicly per se, but just your read on it?
Yes, he definitely did. And in fact, he did that sometimes publicly, and it didn't go over well. I think what happened to Mike was he came in, recognized the situation. De'Aaron Fox is the guy, and he coached De'Aaron Fox with, I'll say tough love. And De'Aaron Fox responded to that. He loved it. Well, then what happened to Mike is when the organization got to a point where we're not sure we want to extend Fox, and, he's not sure he wants to stay here. That ended up making Mike's standing a little more tenuous. But I don't think Domantas Sabonis was a player that appreciated Mike coming out after games sometimes. If Domantas had a good game, which he had a lot of them, I remember Mike saying, yeah, he's a good player, but that's what he's supposed to do. That's what good players are supposed to do. And especially last year when everyone got so frustrated, there was a time or two when he publicly called out Domantas Sabonis. He's got a box out there. I think there was an offensive putback at the end of a game that cost him. And Mike said, he can't do that. He's got to box out there, which is obvious. I don't know that Domas handled that well. And towards the end of last year, also, you had Mike Brown at the end of his year. He openly talked about, look, we have a game plan. We went up there to Portland. They didn't execute it. And he called out the players repeatedly. And he would say, I don't know what more I can do. So it got to a point, players initially, this guy's won championships, this is great. But then by the end of last year, everyone was frustrated. And he lost the team to a degree.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such a delicate balance, and it's so interesting to me how that all plays out. I've seen different iterations of head coaches and front offices here covering the Knicks for a while, and it's always so important. And it's going to be interesting because I think the Knicks, they have a good locker room, but if Mike Brown, is critical of players in post-game press conferences, that's going to get a lot of attention, as I'm sure it did in Sacramento. It's going to get a lot of attention in New York. How do the players react to that? Is there enough trust in that relationship between Brown and that specific player where he can do that and the player responds well? It's something that's behind the scenes that, as a reporter, you can kind of get a feel for it, but you don't really know until you know. And it's just something that I'm going to keep an eye on closely. Also, Tom Thibodeau rarely criticized the Knicks players individually, ever, really. Rarely criticized players. So I'm wondering if Brown is going to going to continue to do that here in New York, or if he'll take another approach. But I want to hear,
if I may, pardon me, but I think
sure.
my sense was that one of the reasons Mike did that is because he was just running out of things to try. And I think
see.
it was almost a desperate attempt to try to get somebody's attention. I don't think he's given to that. He came from the Warriors, and Steve Kerr never did that. So my sense is that one of the reasons he was so vocally criticizing players is because he just didn't know what else to try.
I see. So it wasn't his first, approach, initial approach. It was something that he went to. That's an important distinction. How do you, Shaun, want Mike Brown to be different than Tom Thibodeau?
I think adaptability, and I don't want to take away from Tom Thibodeau. Like, he ended his tenure here much more adaptable than he started it. And so, I appreciate him for that. But I think I would like Mike Brown to just be more open in terms of the offense, more open in terms of lineups, in terms of utilization of the roster. I think, being open to giving other guys a chance, trying more things, trying different lineup combinations over the course of the regular season. I feel like that was part of our problem. And granted, there's an aspect of what Tibbs did in his approach that I appreciate, because I, too, as I expressed earlier, hate losing. So I want to win every single game. So I think that was his main focus throughout the regular season, like, just win this game. But I think the regular season also needs to be used to tweak, to find different combinations and permutations of things for a playoff run. Because then when you don't try different things during the regular season, you get to the playoffs and the Eastern Conference Finals and have to play lineups for the first time. We shouldn't be playing lineups together for the first time in the Eastern Conference Finals. And it wasn't even because of injury. It was just because of lack of experimentation during the season. And now you're trying things on the fly in the playoffs, and that's not really the best way to go about it. So I just want Mike Brown to be more imaginative.
Kevin, for you, was Mike Brown, did he tinker with lineups? Was he set in stone on certain things from day one that didn't change? Was he adaptable? How did you view him in that regard?
Well, I'll give you an example. Malik Monk. Mike had Malik Monk coming off the bench. Malik wasn't crazy about it, but I talked to Malik about it. He said, Mike says what's good for everybody, that's what I'm going to do, what's good for the team. And Malik went along with that. He was very effective. It got to the point last season, people were so frustrated that eventually Mike had to, I think he was forced. I think someone insisted that he start Malik, which didn't go especially well. And then after Mike was let go, they sent Malik back to the bench. Mike had some issues with some players, and I don't think he was thrilled with the players that he was getting. I think Mike was looking for some wings. That's one reason I think, to some of the things Shaun was saying and you were saying, Ian, he's going to love the wings he has with the Knicks, and he's going to love Mitchell Robinson, because he was looking for some size, some front court defenders, and he didn't get them here. And I think his frustration showed with his rotations, where a guy like Sasha Vezenkov, they brought him over. He was the big acquisition the year after they went to the playoffs against the Warriors. And Mike would hardly play him. And I don't know if he struggled so much defensively. And then he also had Chris Duarte that year. He was in, he was out. So Mike struggled with consistent lineups. But in my opinion, it was more the roster than it was a coach who was being stubborn.
Yes, that's it's interesting, because it goes back to the tie-in between the front office and the coaching staff. And I'm sure the Knicks now, after spending 5 years looking for Tom Thibodeau type players, looking for players to fit what Tom Thibodeau wants to do, now it's a shift where you look for guys who Mike Brown appreciates and thinks he can elevate the Knicks. And so it's a different beast. But as long as the alignment's there, I think that's what's most important. It sounds like Mike didn't always get the guys that he wanted in Sacramento. So something to keep an eye on. And we're going to get back to Brown in a little bit, but I really want to spend some time with Shaun and Kevin. I think you'll appreciate it. Shaun and Deem putting together Knicks Twitter Day. Hundreds of fans showed up in Brooklyn for what was a basketball tournament, a gathering, and something that was put together by Shaun and Dean, and they pulled it off, because I wasn't able to be there, unfortunately, but it looked like a lot of fun. And Shaun, what was it like for you just to have that all come together the way it did?
Honestly, it was a dream come true. It's still a little surreal. I haven't fully processed everything yet, but just to have the entire community come out and be a part of it. And so, I also want to stress that, I want to stress like, yes, we put it together, but the community made it happen. Like, we can book the gym and say whatever, but if the people don't come out, and, you know, we had amazing volunteers. We had people who captured footage and captured, you know, photography, who helped the moment to live forever and help people, like, you know, people got to, I'm seeing people's profile pictures changing left and right. Everybody just had a great time. And so that was surreal. Like I said, I wanted to win, of course. So I'm very disappointed about the championship double overtime loss. However, you know, I feel like that adds to the story. You know, that's what Cass told me. Also, like, everybody that we had be a part of it. Ben Stiller came out. Like, I mean, come on, man. He was out. Ben Stiller came out and really, like, he didn't just come out, which is, and I'm sorry, every time I talk about Ben Stiller, I start fanning out. But like, he didn't just come out. He came and he took pictures with everybody outside, to the point where I was like, all right, guys, we have to let him come inside. And he still stayed out there and took pictures. Then he came inside, he took pictures of everybody inside. He joined the commentary table. He was commentating the game. He was recording. He was interviewing people. He was taking pictures with babies. I mean, like, you know, it was just such an amazing event. And like, you know, a couple of people said what their experience was like meeting him and shaking his hand. I'm just so glad that, because I remember what it was like when I got to meet him and shake his hand. And like, even still, so just, you know, putting people in position to have that great of a time is such a great feeling. Getting that dunk, you know, shout out to you know, the victims, but getting that dunk was excellent. That was a great feeling. Seeing it go viral was cool. Everything of, oh, the dunk is playing on the show. This is amazing.
Here we go.
Yeah, yeah, man. Like, it was an incredible day, an incredible time. The energy was incredible. Thank you to everyone who came out. People were invested in the game, like in the games, like it was an actual Knicks game. Like, the crowd was into it, and yeah, just an incredible day, man. I could talk about it forever, but it was incredible.
That's awesome. I was saying before the show, it looked like you dunked on half of a podcast with that. And just Ben Stiller, I mean, what you said it all, Shaun, but remarkable for him to be who he is and then do what he did and just be kind of just there and kind of soaking it in and talking to people. And I don't think you can ever question his Knicks fandom. Not that you could before, but people always want to say, you know, if you weren't rooting in '94, you're not a real Knicks fan. Whatever they want to say, can't say it about Ben Stiller in my mind. And Kevin, I think, and I don't know much about Kings Twitter, but I would put your radio squad as an early favorite if there was a Kings Twitter Day basketball tournament. I know you can run the point like Clyde, and I think you guys would. You and Draper and the crew, I will put you guys as an early favorite. What do you think?
I don't think I'd be running it down like Shaun. And, you know, Draper takes up a lot of air. He needs a lot of touches, but yeah, I give him what he needs as a point guard.
And Jalen Brunson saying, can we not do this on a holiday weekend next year? So, you know, you're catching the eye of everybody. And yeah, is that how it's going to go? Is it going to be?
I just want to say, I want to make a PSA. Jalen, you are deciding the date this year, brother. Like, let us know. Get back to me. Let me know it works for you. I apologize to the entire community for scheduling at a time that didn't work for Jalen Brunson. We did 4th of July weekend because it just felt like, okay, people got to travel. There's an extra day. You know, it seemed convenient, but a lot of people said it was an issue. So we will not be doing that going forward. Jalen Brunson will be deciding the next date. So if it's inconvenient for anybody, don't blame me. Blame Jalen Brunson. He's the captain. We just do what he says.
Hats off again, Shaun, to you and your partner who put it together, Dean. And it's fantastic to watch from afar. I look forward to definitely being there next year. Watch out, man. They used to call me young Chris Dudley when I was coming up. So I might have to bring my Dudley game to the floor. Right.
Yes, that would be amazing.
You don't have to.
All right, we're going to shift gears and we'll get into the talk back section of the show where we take your questions and we get into the topics here on the show. Normally we have Matt Spenley, social media guru, to relay the questions and jump on with us. He did get a promotion, so now I think he thinks he's a little too big for our show, but that's okay. Maybe he'll come back next week. I think he's there's a little Hollywood impact with Spenley right now. We'll talk to him about it though. We're going to start, guys, with a question about I want to start with a question about Coach Brown from Nelly X Teen, and Nelly says, considering the roster is presently constructed, do you have an idea who Coach Brown would be more likely to start? And Kevin, I want to ask you about that, not as if like you're predicting here, but just based on what you know and what you know of the Knicks roster and Brown. You think he would go double bigs, Robinson and Towns, or do you think he would go a different direction?
I would be a little surprised if they went double big. Although, see, and I know I'm kind of contradicting myself because Mitch can kind of make up for some of Cat's defensive deficiencies. I remember when Gobert got traded to Minnesota, I asked a former coach, well, who's Karl Anthony Towns going to guard? And the former coach told me, he's going to guard the same person he always guards, nobody. So I know. So, yeah, double big at least you'd have an opportunity to make up a little bit for the defensive deficiencies, Cat, as far as a big. So, yeah, that makes sense. I think he'd do that.
And Shaun, I thought it was interesting because Kershaw Yabusele, I was told one of the topics that came up during discussion was the idea that he's so versatile coming off the bench that he could back up, both bigs, Mitchell Robinson and Karl Towns. And the inference there is that's the way I guess some people see them starting out next year with those double bigs. Obviously, Mike Brown wasn't even hired yet. It's going to be his decision. It's not going to be, I would assume it's not going to be anybody else's final decision but his. But I thought that was interesting that was at least part of the topic of conversation with one of the free agents. And Shaun, I want you to take a stab at this one. NYK mentality, 1985. What's the plan for Mitchell Robinson under Mike Brown? And the question here is, will Mitch be load managed throughout the entire regular season in order to have him 100% healthy for the playoffs? Shaun, you've been following Mitch closely his whole career, through it all. Injuries, exceptional play when he's healthy, learning on the floor. Do you think the Knicks should have a plan in place here where he's playing 60%, 70% of what he normally would do in a regular season in order to have him ready to go in the postseason? Or do you think they just go as anybody would and have him play regular workload?
First off, I want to say from the last question, shout out to Nelly, Knicks Twitter Day scorekeeper, staple in the community. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Nelly. And as far as this question, honestly, I think that maybe like reduce the minutes, like not playing him 30 minutes, maybe giving him 25 minutes a game to keep him fresh throughout the year. But I don't think we should be like sitting him too often. Like, when he came back this season, he wasn't playing back-to-backs, and that's because he wasn't like fully in shape yet. And I also think it kept him out of rhythm and kept the team out of rhythm a bit. So I want the team to have some continuity and consistency. So hopefully we can get him on a consistent regimen, like a certain amount of minutes per game every night. I think that if he is healthy, we shouldn't necessarily treat him like he's not.
I think that's a fair point. It's going to be. I mean, the Knicks, they were able to avoid injury for the most part last year. I mean, Jalen Brunson hurt, but they, as teams kind of saw their key guys go down and in inopportune times, the Knicks stayed healthy. So I don't know if that could be replicated, but certainly that's a big part of success in this league, and we'll see how they approach it with Robinson and everybody else. And we've got a question here on YouTube. Oliver Schlesinger is checking in from YouTube. Thoughts on the Giannis quote? Thoughts on the Giannis quote saying we'll see about staying with the Bucks. There was a quote from Giannis several weeks ago about wanting to win a title, wanting to do it with the Bucks. That was from an overseas outlet, and he gave a reaction on social media after the Bucks acquired Miles Turner. Just in talking to people in the aftermath of the Turner move, if they were betting, they would bet that Giannis would go elsewhere because that's the way it's kind of been trending for a while now, and that the Turner acquisition wouldn't cause him to stay in Milwaukee. Does the Bucks have anything else up their sleeve in the offseason? Are they going to make any other big moves to bolster that roster? They're pretty limited flexibility-wise, but I don't know. The consensus from my conversations, and again, people are people from other teams are speculating, call it informed speculation. They just didn't think that Turner would be enough to keep him in Milwaukee. And the idea that, he hasn't really, they haven't renewed their vows, so to speak, Giannis and the Bucks yet in a public way. Obviously, with his quote there in that stream, he's still thinking about things. And, from a Knicks perspective, they and every other team, 28 other teams, are keeping an eye on this situation, seeing which way it goes. And the thing that's interesting to me, Mikal Bridges, extension eligible, has not been extended yet. And once you extend him, you can't trade him for 60 days, I believe it is. Oh, no, I think it's longer than that. You can't trade him for a period of time where if he signs the extension, the Knicks would have to go a different way, whether it was Anunoby or Karl Towns, to trade for a player like Giannis. So that's just something to keep an eye on with the Bridges extension. I think it's 6 months, 6 months. You can't deal him after he signs that extension. So that's one factor there. But with Bridges, Shaun, I think it's going to be interesting with Mike Brown and Bridges because different coach, different style offensively. Brown did say he adapts to his personnel in terms of what kind of offense he likes to run. But do you see Mike Brown being able to get more from Mikal Bridges, assuming there's no big fireworks with the Giannis trade and it's a similar group coming back? You see Brown using him in a different way?
For sure. I think Mikal was frustrated at times with his utilization offensively, and that's what I mean by being more imaginative. I feel like he was, kind of put in that role that we've seen a few people be put in the Knicks offense where it's like, stand over here and wait for something. And so Mikal is very capable of creating, but Mikal also needs to be more aggressive. I mean, just frankly, Mikal can't be allergic to layups. Every single time he drove, it ended in a fadeaway. He got a long pass in the Pacers series, and instead of laying it up, he took it out and took a turnaround fadeaway. It wasn't only Tibbs where Mikal wasn't able to do what he needed to do. Like Mikal just has to be more aggressive regardless of who's coaching. But I do think that Mike Brown can put him in some positions and situations to be more comfortable being aggressive.
And I hit on one from my friend Papa Left, who's checking in on YouTube. A big fan of Papa on social media and in real life. Always good running into him. The Knicks no longer interested in Ben Simmons and Russell Westbrook. What's the status on a potential reunion with Shamet or Wright? I'll hit on those quickly. Simmons, they've continued to be in touch. I mean, as of late last week, earlier this week, a few days ago, I checked in. Continued to be in touch there. Russell Westbrook, I'm not sure. There was a lot of talk of Westbrook in Sacramento. And so, there you go. So I don't know if that's going to come to fruition, but that was real. And I don't, with the Knicks, if they go 9, where would Westbrook be in that rotation? What would that look like? Can they go 9? Which I would think they will go 9. But what's Westbrook's role? So I think, it's more likely to be a Simmons type or you mentioned Shamet and Wright. I'm not sure about Wright. Not to say they are or aren't interested in him. I just don't know. But I know that with Shamet, there's still been interest. Again, I checked in a couple of days ago that she is still on their radar in terms of that last spot. And Kevin, well, first, Westbrook, where do you think the Kings are with Westbrook at the moment?
I think the Kings really like what his energy and intensity could bring to the party. So I believe they're very interested and they're still talking. They do have a glut of guards right now. It's one reason we're hearing, that the likes of Malik Monk and Devin Carter, maybe they're checking the value of them. I think they'd love to bring in Westbrook, and I won't be surprised if they do it. But right now, there's just not room for him on the roster, so they have to address that.
Right. And is there a Mike Brown type player, intangibles or on-court skills? Is there an archetype that Mike Brown, likes or always kind of wants to sign or trade for?
I don't know. The guy who comes to mind is, obviously he just loved Draymond Green. Now that's not really an archetype because he's so unique, but he just, I think he was looking, like I said, he tried to make Sabonis in a way, at least in the offensive end, something of a Draymond Green. So he just really appreciates players that can play at both ends. And I think, like I said, I'm repeating myself, he's going to love some of the wings that you guys have and what they're able to bring defensively.
Yeah, I mean, Anunoby and Bridges, ups and downs last year during the regular season. I think both had their moments in the postseason where you could say the Knicks don't get to where they ended up getting to without those two guys. Bridges, not great against Indiana. Anunoby, a little bit inconsistent, but certainly I think that there's a lot of room to grow there with the talent on the wings. And he actually said, I think he said to a fan that he ran into in the airport, the fan, I don't know, asked him about LeBron maybe or Giannis, and he said, I'm not giving up my wings. So there you go, from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Got one here on the assistant coaches. Let me find it. Where did it go? Sorry. Here we go. From Jay Nicky. And Jay Nicky played, right, John?
That's my guy. That's my guy. Not only did Jay Nicky play, Jay Nicky was running with me on my team, the Impossible Power Rangers, and we both played every single minute. Neither one of us subbed out all day. So shout out my guy Jay Nicky.
There you go. Good.
Best graphic designer out there, by the way.
What's that? Say it again.
I said best graphic designer out there, by the way. If you need a graphic done, Jay Nicky is your guy.
Get at Jay Nicky Y on the end if you need to get him to do some graphics. He wants to know who are some assistant coaches Knicks could hire now that Borrego is staying in New Orleans. Yes, James Borrego, we noted it yesterday, not going to leave the Pelicans. And so my read on this is Mike Brown, Kevin, as you know, I think a lot of his staff went and got other jobs, or some of the staff that was with him in Sacramento went out and got other jobs. So my read on it is still that, Rick Brunson and Mark Bryant and Maurice Mo Cheeks, and Darren Erman, I expect them to be holdovers on Mike Brown's staff. Obviously, they were on Tom Thibodeau's staff. And so there's not a ton of room in terms of adding multiple, big name assistants there. So that's kind of my read on it with Brown. And he's going to have obviously the freedom and he's going to bring in somebody who he wants to be his number two, his associate head coach. But beyond that, I just don't know if there's room to bring in another coach with like a significant background and pedigree. And so who's the associate head coach going to be? I've heard a couple names, but I haven't heard it strongly enough to report. And I think in a perfect world, they bring in somebody who is creative on offense, because that's what Borrego was going to bring to the Knicks if the Knicks were able to, get him out of New Orleans, which did not happen. And Kevin, just in terms of Mike in Sacramento, how much does he lean on his assistants? How much kind of leeway do they have, impact do they have night in and night out?
Well, Jay Triano is a guy that I would have had an eye on as far as Mike's staff, but as you know, he signed up to join the Mavs recently. So Jay Triano was a very loyal and great associate head coach for Mike Brown. And it's kind of funny because Jordi Fernandez also, when he first got here, Jordi Fernandez was, I think he ran the defense, and now you've got Mike Brown and Jordi, and they're running the two teams in New York. Luke Laux left the team to go to Florida State last year. And that was really odd because you had the coaching staff splintering in the middle of the season because, some of the coaches were loyal to Mike. But to answer your question, Jay Triano helped Mike craft that offense, that DHO offense that he brought from Golden State. And Jordy did a great job with the defense. So he relied on his top assistants a lot, and he had some good ones.
It's funny that you mentioned Jay, because I said I've heard a couple names. And I'll just say, agents, opposing coaching agents, people from other teams, that's a name that keeps coming up or kept coming up. Obviously under contract in Dallas, so it would be another situation where you're trying to get a Mavs coach who's under contract out from under his contract to bring him in. Not easy, but that is a name that I had heard a few times just from people who are keeping an eye on this thing, Triano. We'll see where it goes. And I also, Ricky Huas is a name that I'd heard. Did you get to know him at all, Kevin, when he was in Sacramento?
No,
he was part of Mike's bench. And I heard that there's a chance he comes over. I don't know if in a major role or a supporting role, but I did hear that that's something that's under consideration. But that's kind of where it sits right now with the coaching staff. And we'll do one more here in terms of our fan questions. Let me get back to it. My apologies. This is where we need Matt Spenley. Hollywood Spenley, big time us.
Congratulations to Matt.
Yeah, great. I'm joking around. I'm so happy for him. He did get a promotion and he deserves it. And it's all good stuff. Let's go with, I'm doing a question from @Ian Begley. LeBron. Shaun, where's LeBron on opening night?
Ooh.
Oh, wow. Okay. I believe that LeBron is a Laker on opening night. However, you asking me that question makes me raise an eyebrow because you know more than I do. So, I feel like if LeBron isn't a Laker, I don't know if it's the buyout thing. That would be super unprecedented. I feel like if LeBron would get bought out, there's really only one place he would go. I feel like he'd end up here, which is kind of crazy. I know people feel away. I've heard people say, oh, I don't want LeBron here because I don't want our championship to be about him when we win it and blah, blah, blah. Listen, I want to make this very, very, very clear for everybody within earshot of my voice. I don't care who they send here when we win the championship. If we win a championship, I don't care who does it. I don't care if it's Elfrid Payton. And if you know me, you know how I feel about Elfrid Payton. I don't care if it's Evan Fournier. Let it be LeBron James. I don't care who the story is about. Tell whatever story you want while we were at the parade. I just won a championship, so I'm not complaining. But yeah, I don't expect him to be here. I'm not clamoring for him. I've done that already. Summer 2K10, I fell to my knees when he said South Beach on the decision. My wallpaper was LeBron photoshopped in a Knicks uniform. I swore he was coming here. So I would never, ever get myself there again. But, if he does get bought out, Jordan Clarkson on a Vetman was one thing. LeBron James on a Vetman, whoa. So, yeah, that would be insane.
Kevin, I turn to you, my friend. Where is he opening night?
Oh, he'll be with the Lakers opening night, but I'll have some fun with you. Before it's all said and done, he'll be with Steph in Golden State, the Warriors. And I don't even know if there's any way to do that. You look at fiscally, financially, but I think the Warriors, things that they struggle this year, they might want to send Steph out, take one last big swing with Steph. And I know LeBron's always had half an eye on the situation in Golden State, so I'll just go with that.
Yeah. I do think that, based on the public statements from Rich Paul, his agent, just people who I respect, teams, agents, read that and they think of it as writing on the wall. So, again, it's informed speculation, but the consensus was this is it. This is the start of the divorce. So no matter how it goes, whether it's a trade, which is tough to make, especially from a team that's trying to compete, would have to send out so much to salary match. That's tough. Or whether it ends up being via buyout. If I'm having to guess today, my guess is he is a Cleveland Cavalier. Maybe not opening night. Maybe it takes a little longer, but that's my guess is where it goes from here with LeBron and going home and trying to win another one at home. Well, we'll see, man. As the NBA turns, there's always something fun to talk about. And it was great to get into the Knicks, Mike Brown, the offseason, the coaching staff, Sacramento, all of it. I can't thank you enough, Kevin, for joining us. And if you want more insight on the Kings, be sure to check out Kevin afternoon drive time on the Kings flagship radio station out in Sacramento. Shaun Geddes, Shaun, I'm possible, and Shaun making it happen here with the Knicks Twitter day a few days ago. And both of you guys really appreciate your time and your insight. And that's going to do it for us on a Putback here today. We're going to be back with you guys at some point soon in the off season to check in and talk moves, what may happen, what may not happen. Hopefully we'll have a special guest or two, and we look forward to seeing you then.